Want to bet? Bet on what?
I'll take that bet right on.
Welcome back in, everybody. This is episode number 6 of Wanna Bet. I'm your host, Matthias, and our goal is to make you better at betting on college football week 3. So this information should be fairly accurate. It's currently Thursday, September 12th. It's about 7 o'clock p.m. So this should be fairly up to date. This will be our final week of using stability scores. So I posted a video about our results from for the season so far. We're sitting at 18-10 against the spread using stability scores, plus getting the line movement in our favor. We have 7 plays this weekend. So we could go 0-7, and theoretically we'd be right around break even, depending on how that juice laid out. So all in all, this strategy is going to be deemed a very big success again this season. All we need is really 1 or 2 games to go in our favor, which I expect them to be higher than that. And it's a profitable strategy to use. So we'll continue utilizing it in the future. Maybe even find a few ways, a few things we can add to it to make our returns a little bit higher. So just like last week, I'm going to go through the stability score index plus our personal handicap plays. And these aren't the juiciest matchups. There's a few in there that people are going to tune into, but we're just going to run through these without a deep dive. If you want more information on stability scores, go and visit our episode from last week on this, and we dive into a little bit more about how these scores are factored. But here are the 7 plays for this week. We have Arkansas State getting 23.5 versus Michigan, Washington State getting 5 versus Washington, Iowa laying 21 versus Troy, Liberty laying 23 versus UTEP, Oregon laying 16 versus Oregon State, University of South Florida laying 11 versus Southern Miss, and Toledo getting 12.5 versus Mississippi State. So one quick last reiteration. We took the stability score index, and then we gained at least a half a point of value on all those lines. I can't promise you all those lines are still out there. I know Oregon has bumped up to 16.5 and 17 on some books. So just keep that in mind. So now we're going to transition a little bit to the meat and potatoes of moving forward for both college football and NFL. NFL will be a separate video posted tomorrow. We're going to dive into the methodology and the strategy we're going to be utilizing for some of these games. So we use a website called StatSharp, and basically StatSharp, I have no idea how they do it, but they take every single matchup on any given weekend and they run some historical algorithm to find out where are the small intricacies in that matchup and where have we seen big returns as far as against the spread, money line, over under, first half over, blah, blah, blah. Where have we seen those numbers hitting it like a 60% or higher rate? So I kind of sifted through all that stuff so you guys didn't have to. And we have a few games this weekend that qualify for major advantages if we're using this play. When I read these descriptions, it's going to be a lot. Some of them are very wordy, and it's just purely stats. It's pure data. So this isn't a well antiquated, monologue, so to say. So if you're not into that stuff, you're not going to hurt my feelings. This is not the video series for you. If you love that stuff and you're trying to gain an edge, click subscribe right now and keep watching, because every week I'm going to comb through all these and bring you what I think are the best 4 or 5, maybe even more. Once I'm not using stability scores, that'll open up a little bit more time for me to comb through these. So here are our top plays using pure analytics this weekend. And then also we're always going to be hunting the best lines. So we'll go a little bit of chronological order here. Up first, Friday night, Kansas is hosting the UNLV Rebels. This is a non-conference game. Currently sitting at Kansas minus 9.5. The over-under is set to 57.5. So if you watched Kansas versus Illinois last weekend, Illinois won the game outright. Kansas, did they play well? No. Did they have a lot of things not go in their favor? Yes. So not a bad football team, but they are coming off a bad loss. UNLV, on the other hand, has been surprisingly decent. Where they're sitting now, I think they're going to hope to contend for their conference. Friday night game, non-conference. I think you're going to have quite a bit of action on both sides. I think both teams are going to come out scoring. And I assumed that before I even looked into the stats of it. But here is one reason that we are going to be on over 57.5 for this Kansas versus UNLV game. Kansas State head coach Lance Leopold is 9-0 to the over in games after a straight-up loss the previous weekend. The average number of these game point totals have been set at 60.3 points. So currently, Kansas is averaging 32.5 points per game. UNLV is averaging 49.5 points a game. So every time the Jayhawks have lost a game outright the previous week, the following weekend, they have hit the over, 9-0. So hard to bet against that one. You heard the team's points per games. It just adds up to a number that we're very comfortable laying a unit down and hoping it hits. Both these teams are 0-2 against the spread so far this season. Kansas is 1-1 against the spread. UNLV is 2-0 against the spread. Sorry. Kansas is coming off a bad loss. You think it's a little bit of a get-right game, but this is the stat that stood out to me. Underdogs of 3.5 to 10 points in non-conference games in the first month of the season versus a team that appeared in a bowl game the previous season that lost the previous week. Okay, I'm going to say that one again. Underdogs of 3.5 to 10 points in non-conference games in the first month of the season versus a team that appeared in a bowl game the previous season and lost the previous week outright. Very wordy, I know. However, since 1992, every single game that has fallen into that category, the team that's the underdog has won against the spread 76 times and lost 35. So massive, massive percentage of wins hitting as far as laying those points or receiving those points. UNLV now has been bet down a little bit. I think they're sitting at, it's sitting at 8.5 right now. If you can still grab them at 9.5, I love that number. 8.5 is still not a bad play because those stats, 76 and 35 against the spread, they're sitting at 8.5 now. So you may have missed the best number with UNLV. 9's a little bit of a key, not quite. So if you can get the 8.5 still, I'd still definitely pay it. If you want to pay some extra juice, take that hook away and bet it up to 9, that'd probably be a safe strategy. So those are the two bets we're putting in Friday night. Up next, one of two top 25 matchups this weekend. Kansas State is hosting Arizona Friday night. Kansas State is currently the favorite, laying 7.5. Over-under is set to 60. These teams are a combined 0-4 against the spread. So something's got to give. Two teams that 3 weeks ago would have both told you they would be contenders in the Big 12 to win that conference and go to the college football playoff. Although they're both 2-0, they both have had pretty bumpy starts. Kansas State could have lost to Tulane last week. There was a really, really bad pass interference call that allowed them to win that game outright. Arizona, on the other hand, they played FCS Northern Arizona last weekend. Won by 12 points, but in a very ugly fashion. They were 0 for 10 on third down. They had 10 penalties and only ended up winning by 12 points. So Arizona, not looking great. Kansas State, not playing great. So this will be a pretty good rivalry game. Big matchup for the two teams if they have any type of playoff ambitions. I know this doesn't sound like much, but here is one of the numbers that I found for research in this game. Road underdogs facing a poor passing defense from last season. K-State was 60th in the nation for the record. That are returning 8 or more starters, one of which is their quarterback, are 45 and 59 money line since 2015. Now, I know what you're thinking, 45 and 59, that's a losing percentage. But every time that this has been applicable, the average juice that you'd be receiving is plus 270. So if you bet $100, you'd get $200.70 back. Excuse me. If you bet $100, you'd be receiving $270 for winning that bet. So if you put $100 every time this was applicable, you'd be up $6,250 right now. So that was kind of a fun stat that I saw, and I liked Arizona in this game as far as covering the spread. I'm not going to lay a full unit with that money line. I'll put a half unit money line Arizona State, but I also like just Arizona. I also like Arizona to cover the 7.5 points. that they're getting. So half unit on that money line play just because that stat's pretty juicy. Up next, this is one I kind of hate. This is the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me game. I thought for sure Florida State would come out after that bad performance against Georgia Tech in week 0. I thought they'd come out at home facing Boston College and put on a show for their fans, and they got absolutely curb stomped in every aspect of that word. Memphis is, on paper, one of the best teams that's not in a Power 4 conference. They play in the American Athletic Conference. Florida State's probably the biggest game on their entire season card this year. I like Memphis going into this a lot, but when I saw this stat, it made me like them even more. Road underdogs that have 2 consecutive games where they commit no turnovers in their previous matchups, facing an opponent that committed at least 1 in their last game, are 30-7 against the spread since 2020. So Memphis, I would have taken getting 7 points to begin with because I think Florida State is a sham. They have 5 stars decommitting left and right. I saw a video at their practice where they're running around with squirt guns this past week. So I don't know. I just really think their program's in a bad spot. They're very down on themselves. And Memphis is, if they want to get to the college football playoff, this is a game they have to win. So I like Memphis in this spot. Currently, it's sitting at 7. If this goes down to 6.5, I want to get off that because I could very, very easily see this one finishing in a last-second touchdown. So if it's ending Memphis plus 6.5, buy up the half point, take it to 7. If you want to pay a little extra juice, you could get off a 7 to 7.5. Over under 52.5. I do really like that play, but based on how Florida State's looked, I'm just not trusting them to put points on the board. So my play for this one is Memphis to cover, to get the 7 points and cover that one. So I mentioned these guys in the stability score rankings. Oregon Ducks going to Oregon State. Man, they're laying 16 points. That's the number I got. Now it's sitting at 16.5 or 17 on some books. If Oregon has that second gear, third gear, fourth gear, they have to shift to it this weekend. You know, they have Ohio State next weekend. They think they're going to be a national championship contending football team. They came out and looked boring against Idaho last week. Boise State's a very good football team, but still they did not cover the spread, so they're 0-2 against the spread. Now they're laying 16 on the road to a rival. This one doesn't pencil out very well for Oregon State, even though Oregon has not passed the look at me test so far, but I truly think their quarterback has played well. They just haven't put points on the board. I handicapped this one out to 17 points, Oregon. I'm going to ride them one more time here. There's no big stats or juicy things for this one. This was just a stability score and then getting off the 17 points. So I'm taking the Oregon Ducks here, and I'm not very happy doing it, but I'm going to trust the system, and that's the play. The final game we're going to talk about will probably be the game that has the most viewership this weekend for obvious reasons of, you know, kind of that like them, love them, hate them kind of thing. We got the Colorado Buffaloes going to Colorado State. So Colorado and Deion Sanders got pummeled by Nebraska last weekend. Nebraska's running game was dominant. Their defensive line was dominant. They shut down Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. They just looked horrible. But talent should prevail here. Colorado has a substantially more talented roster. You take away the offensive and defensive line matchup because I think that's where Colorado's weakest. They have a top 5 quarterback in the nation, whether you like it or not. They have the best athlete in the entire country, Travis Hunter, whether you like it or not. Colorado's laying 7 here. The math is mathing, even though I don't want it to. So road teams from a major 1A conference playing an opponent from a second-tier conference, such as the Mountain West, and losing the previous week are 86-40 against the spread in these matchups. So that stat falls into play with the Colorado team that they're going into Colorado State this weekend. So I like Colorado laying the 7. Like I said, over under 58. Stay off of that one. I don't think Colorado State's going to score much in this one. I think Dion, if there was one time where he could have an "I told you so" moment, it's probably going to be this one. If you guys remember last season, Colorado hosted Colorado State, and Colorado State probably should have won that game. You know, they had Lil Wayne in attendance and a bunch of other celebrities, and that was kind of I think that was the last win Colorado had on the season, maybe. So if Dion wants to keep that program together, they have to win this game, and I think it has to be by convincing fashion. So I'm laying the points with Colorado, and that's going to be our final wager that we have so far on the weekend. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, JuiceReel, Pickett, wherever you get your social media of choice. Everything's going to be at Bottom Shelf. I'll put all that in the description below. So those are our plays this weekend. I will put the full card up here. As we have updates to that, I will post everything to Twitter. So be sure to comment, like, and subscribe if you enjoy what we're doing. If you think I could be doing something better, please let us know. We appreciate you guys watching. And most importantly, good luck with all your bets this weekend.